Now, Mr. President, I ask that I be recognized for such time I shall consume.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm here today to talk a little bit about Burundi, something that the occupier, the chair of the Senate right now, is familiar with. Burundi and its people. I had occasion to be in Burundi at their request some 16 years ago. At that time, they had the president's name was Buyoya. He's not there anymore. They've changed presidents, but there's something that's going on there that I think our State Department's really dropped the ball one more time in not interpreting, not understanding what the people of a country want, their self-determination. And despite the history of outside interference and civil wars and social unrest, Burundi has emerged as a largely cohesive society, overcoming the ethnic divisions that plagued it in the 20th century, back at the time when I was first there. On the 3rd of April, I led a congressional delegation of 6 members to Burundi, where we visited with President Nkurunziza. President Nkurunziza has been there now. He's just completed, is in the middle of his second elected term to office. And we talked to members of the parliament there. Really intimate relations with the members of parliament. We actually prayed together, we met together, and got to know them quite well. We saw continued growth as the democracy as signs of movements towards a diversified economy under the leadership of President Nkurunziza. He announced on the 25th of April to run for president again, and his announcement was met by increased protests and criticism from the international community. Now, that's primarily led by us. That's our State Department, that's the United Nations, that's a few other countries that seem to think that they can know more about an independent nation than they know. And so this president, again, they were criticizing him for running for office again. Now, here's the problem. They have a provision in their Constitution that says that no one can run for office, run for the president of Burundi more than 2 times. Now, the problem exists that he was not elected the first time. He was appointed by Parliament. So essentially, yes, he was elected once. He hadn't been elected again until his recent election. But again, why would we even be want to get involved in it? On the 4th of May, Burundi's Constitutional Court ruled that President Nkurunziza, his first term did not count because he was picked by Parliament rather than elected by the people. Now, this is followed by a failed coup that took place right after this. Leading up to the presidential elections, the Peace and Security Council of the African Union said, and this is a quote, "All Burundian stakeholders, we ask to respect the decision of the Constitutional Court when delivered." So now we have the African Union, we have the courts, we have the people in an election talking about the fact that, yes, he is qualified to run a 3rd time, all except our government wanting to impose its desires on another country. On 29th of May, we had 6 of us that were over in Burundi, and we voiced our support for the decision of Burundi's Constitutional Court and called on the international community to support the court's ruling. President Nkurunziza won the election for president on July 21st. He got 69% of the vote. Now, instead of working with Burundi and its people, and the international community has been denouncing the election and stepped up pressure on the newly elected government via sanctions and withdrawal of support. The United States suspended military training in July. Now, that's one of the things that we do around the world that is really working now. And that is going a train and equip program. We go into the countries and we work with them, help to train those individuals. Of course, when that happens, we have the allegiance of those countries. And if we don't do it, you can be sure that China or somebody else is going to be doing it. It's something that works. We actually get in there and train. Well, we withdrew that training. And we're creating vacuums that are going to be filled by people who might be prone toward terrorism. So we suspended the military training. We announced that Burundi will no longer benefit from the trade preferences under the African Growth and Opportunity Act beginning in 2016, and sanctioned 4 individuals who have contributed to the turmoil, including threats to peace and security, actions that undermine democratic institutions, and human rights abuses. And I'm concerned that the responses by the United States and the international community will do more harm than good in terms of finding a resolution to the current political crisis. Young people are going to be denied jobs. They're not going to have the opportunity, the economic opportunities to participate. And according to the New York Times, and this is written on December the 5th, the violence seems to have shifted from what appeared to be government-sponsored to rebel-sponsored. Further quoting, there have been more assassination attempts, more grenades tossed at government property, and more random shootings, all thought to be the handiwork of the opposition. Yesterday, on December 8th, nearly 100 Burundian protesters who opposed President Nkurunziza's during the months of violence in Bujumbura have been released from prison. We're going to have to continue to support and stand with the people of Burundi in their growth as a democratic nation. The United States and international community should support and encourage a political resolution, not drive division and further unrest. And while the violence and the loss of life that has occurred in Burundi can't be condoned, the situation could have been much worse if it were not for the actions taken by the President Nkurunziza, the opposition forces, and the people of Burundi. I've been working to bring all parties together to resolve their differences and was encouraged by comments made at Burundi's National Prayer Breakfast by the President Nkurunziza. The representatives of different political parties about looking forward and not looking behind, and they had a tremendous applause. I mean, these countries in the continent of Africa that meet in small groups on a regular basis in the spirit of Jesus, actually, and they have the National Prayer Breakfast now, and that's what they had, and it was, except for the outside interference, peace has been settling in, and people are living with the decision they made. And of course, 69% of them haven't voted for this president. So yeah, I echo President Museveni. President Museveni is the president in Uganda. He's another one we're very close to. His confidence that a lasting solution to the conflict in Burundi will be found, and I encourage all sides to meet together in Kampala. They're going to have a meeting there as soon as possible to begin resolving the political differences. I consider President Museveni a friend, and I believe he is the leader that can facilitate efforts to find a lasting solution to the political situation in Burundi. The way forward begins first with putting the elections behind us, acknowledging that Pierre Nkurunziza is the president of Burundi. Second, an immediate agreement by all sides to work together to end the violence and to provide the time needed to resolve differences in Kampala. This also includes the international community, who I charge to take positive actions to help enhance peace versus merely demanding it through punishment. And finally, beginning an all-inclusive meetings in Kampala under the leadership of President Museveni from Uganda. I understand the fears that Burundi may regress toward ethnic violence, but I do not agree that it is a likely outcome of the current situation. So we're going to have to work with Burundi and not isolate it and its people, and only by working together maintain stability and calm that we can avoid a widespread bloodshed and the harshest critics are predicting that would come true. You know, our State Department, quite often, I've been very critical. I know there's some good people there, but I have intimate relations with the leadership of many of the countries over there. And I see what we're doing that is wrong. I remember the State Department, the same group of people, the United Nations, the State Department in France, got involved in Côte d'Ivoire when the President Gbagbo had won a legitimate election, and it was rigged by someone who wasn't even from Côte d'Ivoire. And so I've been making several critical speeches on our involvement. You know, it seems like we seem to want to impose our ideas on other countries when it's not to their best interest. So I just want everyone to be aware that this is a problem that is real.